What is up, everyone? Brandon Ferst, aka First Report, representing the First Off the Bench podcast network. Everyone comes off the bench. We are first. Welcome in to the original call to post here on the network. We break down everything thoroughbred horse racing has to offer. And of course, when I say we, I mean myself and my co-host, Raider Jim Martinez. You can find Mr. Martinez at Raider Jim 1090. How you doing tonight, sir?
Hey, I'm doing good. It's finally warming up in Southern California. The sun's out even. It's a wonderful place to be. And today is June the 8th or 9th,
8th.
which means we can start saying, and next month, Del Mar is going to open.
Yep. Everyone here in San Diego, they love the fair. My favorite part of the fair is July 4th because I know that the fair is over and it's time for the main event to cruise into town. Del Mar, can't wait to see Del Mar kind of get back. And last year it got back to it, but get back to that, beautiful spot and, packed house, all kinds of that. It's going to be very, very interesting. And this episode, I think, is going to be very interesting as well. It's the first time this year we're kind of seeing a mismatch. Prior to episodes we've done this calendar year, we've been focused on, of course, the Triple Crown, the Kentucky Derby, and the Preakness. Obviously, we are going to be talking about the Belmont, but on top of the Belmont, we also have three of the Breeders' Cup Qualifier, Win and You're In, which is a perfect segue as we kind of shift our focus from the 3-year-olds running for the Triple Crown. Now we start to focus kind of the long summer of getting the Breeders' Cup fields put together. We start to see that get put to shape this weekend. Other races have been going on, but this is kind of the big time we start to focus. I will say this, we are, as Raider Jim alluded to, we are recording on the 8th of June. It is a Thursday, 2 days before the Belmont Stakes. We will kind of have to address the elephant in the room in terms of today. Belmont Park did shut down racing, not because of anything we've seen with Churchill, which we'll get to in a moment, or anything like that. It is, of course, due to poor air quality. That's the Canadian wildfires. The smoke has really taken over New York City and really New York State and really the whole northern United States. I'm sure you've seen the pictures. Air quality very low. Us Californians, we know all about that, unfortunately, with the wildfires. So sending our thoughts out to everyone affected there. And hopefully we will see racing on Saturday. No guarantees, but this podcast, we are going forward with the assumption that the air will be cleared up and the races will be going. And hopefully, if the races do run on Saturday, I hope that the air quality has cleaned up, because we wouldn't want to see that happen just for the sake of the Belmont Stakes. So,
yeah, and to put a little more clarity on this thing, if you will, we're seeing levels over there, air quality levels in New York that go back to the 60s when there was no environmental controls about pollutants and things like that. So to go back 40, 50 years and hit that kind of a level, that really tells you how bad off it is right now. And as I shared with you earlier, I have a friend that went to visit New York just for a vacation, and she sent a picture, and it was just like, as you said to me, the fires in 2007 in San Diego.
Yeah, it's apocalyptic or post-apocalyptic. Even seeing pictures of Yankee Stadium and the orange, kind of almost thinking that the fire is right there, just kind of by the optics of it. Really unfortunate stuff. But we are going to, do what we do here. If you want to get news on the wildfires or any of that stuff, this unfortunately isn't the podcast for you. I'm sure you can find that somewhere else. But we are, of course, going to focus on the thoroughbred side of things, hopefully going forward, if everything is safe to do. But before we, of course, get into that, the big elephant in the room, unfortunately, this is our third podcast this calendar year talking about horse racing, and it seems like we're 3 for 3 now, starting off talking about the situation going on at Churchill. And unfortunately, it has nothing to do with the Derby or anything like that. Last week, Churchill Downs made the call to move their entire meet to Ellis Park, and essentially kind of put a moratorium on running at Churchill Downs as the horse fatalities eventually stopped or capped at 12 total. Of course, this is a story that we started talking about pre-Derby, all the way up till Derby Day, and it is continued. And unfortunately, we've seen 12 horses lose their lives. Churchill has made the call to suspend racing and move it, actually, not even say, hey, we're going to pick up and look at it later. They have moved it. I'll be honest, I tried to find something out there about this, maybe some more specifics in terms of the fatalities and things like that. We are, what I did read is the 3 horses, we got their kind of autopsies. That's not the word, but I don't know the exact word for it right off the top of my head. But essentially, it came back. All of them, none of them came back anything fishy. There was that trainer whose name escapes me right now.
Happy Joseph.
Thank you. Who was, suspended indefinitely. One of those horses came back. Everything checked out, at least in terms of, the nefarious things. And now kind of the focus, or at least from what I read and how I read it, it might be looking at the way the course is. A lot of injuries to hooves and things like that, which that's where, possibly we could go. Now, Churchill shutting things down. This is, assuming, to really kind of dive deep into what is going on, because that is the issue. What is going on? Raider Jim, what are your thoughts on really an unprecedented situation going on at Churchill?
Yeah, right up until May 27th, going back to April 27th, we have 12 deaths. So you're basically running at like three deaths a week. That's not a good clip. I mean, that's just far, far too many. Now, the horse, we have talked about on the podcast numerous times, the Horse Racing Integrity and Safety Act that went past the House. It's been in place. I've made 2 attempts to Congressman Tomko's office, who was one of the co-authors of the bill, to get a statement from them, and I have not received anything back. However, what I have found out is that there is now a Horse Racing Integrity and Safety Authority, and this authority is involved at Churchill right now, and they called a veterinary summit just this week. They brought in a West Coast guy, Dennis Moore, to kind of oversee this and lend some guidance and direction. Now, they've made some changes, and just a few of the changes they've made are a hold on incentives to such as trainer starts. So in other words, no bonuses for trainers because they have, if you get 20 starts, you get this kind of money. If you get 25, you get this kind of money. And those are arbitrary numbers. I don't know what the actual numbers were, but they were getting bonuses for starts. Also limiting purse payouts to the top 5 finishers. Apparently, Churchill had this great scheme where it was every horse in the race got something.
Oh, wow.
I don't know how they did that. Then they are also capping how many races can be run by any one thoroughbred. They're capping it to 4 starts during any 8-week period. So every 2 weeks a horse can run, which that seems reasonable, I guess. Still seems like a very stringent schedule for any animal. The other is, and this one really shocked me, that they are just now putting in ineligibility standards for poor performance. As an example, losing by 12 or more lengths in 5 starts, which I think I was kind of scratching my head when I read this, and I'm sure that sounds kind of surprising to you and to a lot of people. But the most recent death at Churchill Downs was a thoroughbred, Kimberly Dream, euthanized due to an injury in race 1 on May 27th. This horse had lost her 5 previous races by a minimum 14.5 lengths, and there were 3 races where she lost by 31 or more lengths. So they're just throwing this poor horse out there no preconceived notion that this horse is going to have a chance to finish in the money at all. And when you look at some of these, then it makes you wonder, and not to get too political on everything, but this is where if you're going to have a horse racing integrity and safety authority, if you're going to pass the bill, maybe you should have had everything in place to start rolling it out as big time as you could, because Sappy Joseph is banned, indefinitely, but that's only at Churchill. We covered that the last podcast we did. He's running horses in other places. These ineligibility standards seems to me something like that. If you're going to say no, it's not a dangerous sport, we care very much about the animals, well, then this should have been in place already. And capping starts, the limiting purse payouts, things like that. There just seem to be a lot of things that are still out there, still being implemented. And until some governing body really puts rules to the game, it's just going to be the Wild West.
Yeah, and I have high hopes, and I really, really do. I'm optimistic about, the Horse Racing Integrity Act, and I do think, unfortunately, we're seeing it in its infancy. And I think any government program in its infancy, doesn't matter what side of the aisle is in charge, there are a lot of hangups. There are a lot of things. The wording of everything has to be perfect. The red tape, if you will, to get through, even just to get to the real red tape sometimes is a bit much. But for me, this is their moment to kind of do something. And I am glad that we are seeing some movement on that. I'm sure that this might be a great little kind of, template for how they go about this. I don't think anybody in the horse racing world expected Churchill to be ground zero or, essentially the first stop here,
Right.
Specifically, with all due respect to a lot of, even the Los Alamitos and the Golden Gates, the smaller tracks. Maybe you expected something there, and we have seen things there. I go back to, and I don't remember, I brought this up a few times on the podcast. I don't remember the exact year of it, but Del Mar pretty much spent millions of dollars to resurface their track, and they went from dirt to synthetic. And that meet was a disaster. There were horses dying, probably at the same clip. I don't have the exact numbers, and I don't want to say anything, but probably around the same clip of what we're seeing at Churchill. And Del Mar took it upon themselves, rightfully so. I'm not giving them a cookie here, but they did what they needed to do. They said, we messed up. They stopped what they needed to do. They bit the bullet, another X millions of dollars to come in and essentially kind of hit the reset button. We're putting the dirt down. And now Del Mar has that, essentially, I think it's the benchmark, at least of all the big tracks in California, and maybe even on the West Coast. I don't have the exact numbers, but I know they are very, very low. And that's something that Del Mar, and something that I take pride in going to Del Mar, knowing that this is a track that does things the right way. It's
Right.
safe. And just kind of hearing some of those things. I mean, the fact that we have to put a cap, I mean, even the cap that, okay, you can only run your horse essentially twice a month. I'm over here going, hold on. That we might need to be looking closer at once a month. And I'm not someone
That's
who
aggressive.
that doesn't even seem like a limit to me, because part of me goes, hold on, who was running horses once a week? Because that's another issue that we need to tackle, because I don't care what type of horse you have, that should not be happening. And it does kind of surprise me. The last thing you brought up, as you kind of alluded to, that it's like the in boxing, right? You can't go out there and get 25 third round TKOs and continue to get licensed. It does
Right.
get to a
Correct.
point where it's
That's
look,
a very good analogy.
yeah,
Very good analogy.
we know you think your horse is going to be 99-1, and maybe today's the day, but unfortunately, there's a better chance that today is the day that the horse is no longer here, and that's the bigger issue than a long shot coming in. So there are a lot of things that need to be unpacked here. Horse racing as a whole, as a horse racing fan, it breaks my heart, obviously, for the horses first and foremost, and the connections and everything. But is it that it's happening at Churchill? Kind of, selfishly, I guess, because it's the Twin Spires. Whether people know it or not, if you've watched a horse race, more than likely it's been at Churchill Downs, because everybody watches the Kentucky Derby for the most part. If you've watched one horse race a year, it's going to be the Kentucky Derby. It's at Churchill. It'll be interesting to see what's going to happen going forward. Obviously, we're still a very long way away from next year's Kentucky Derby. But I have to imagine that the microscope on Churchill is going to be very, very tight, as it should be going forward. And this is a big test for the Horse Racing Integrity Act, because this is the spotlight. There was a death on Derby Day. It's happening at Churchill, and this is essentially their maiden voyage. I will say I want to give them, the opportunity to maybe make a mistake or two. Hopefully it doesn't cost too much, but I do expect there will be some things that we look back on and go, ooh, maybe that's not what it should have. Even maybe this, excuse me, this restriction, maybe it does need to go to once a month in certain months or something like that. I don't know what it is, but I do think there is going to need some breathing room and some ways to kind of finagle. But at the end of the day, the number one priority has to be the health of the horses. I don't know what the answer is, but the solution has to be what is best for the horses going forward. And hopefully we can find that median, because I'll be honest, if we can't find that happy median at Churchill Downs, that's not a good sign for horse racing. But
right. And in my past, my job was a lot of writing of disaster preparedness plans, business continuity plans, things like that. It just boggles the mind that they are being reactive and not proactive. And that is from the development of the Horse Racing Integrity and Safety Authority to, okay, so now we're at Churchill and we're going to do this shutdown and move the horses. We're still going to run them, but now we're going to look at Churchill. So are you not going to go through all the major players until they have issues? So we're not going to come in and look at Del Mar. We're not going to scrutinize Del Mar. I think they need to have safety inspections, things like that. And I know that is supposed to already be in place, but obviously there's a lot of missing links there.
Well, and then it begs the question of who's doing these. Maybe if it's your head's groundskeeper, and I don't know who that would be. I'm just kind of spitballing here. Maybe it's a Friday. He's had a long day, and you know what? I walked the track on Wednesday. Everything looked fine. I'm just going to sign off on it real quick. Maybe independent or independent agencies, and that might already be in place. I don't really know, but that's a great point about, do we wait till we get double digits of horse fatalities before we start to look at it? Or do we take a moment?
I'm sure New York Racing Authority has a team that goes out regularly to Belmont, to all the aqueduct, the tracks out there. It just boggles the mind again that of all places, right there in Louisville, they don't have that.
Well, and that's, I think, when we unravel this ball, that is what is at the center, the meat and potatoes of this argument and this situation is the uniformity of it. You just talked about, hey, New York has those and all that stuff. Well, does Kentucky? Well, maybe they do, but they do it this way. And I think that's what we need to get rid of now. Now it's, if you're racing under essentially kind of like bringing it back to boxing, if you're going to box in the state of California, these are the rules that you have to adhere to. Now take the state out of it and say, look, if you're racing in North America, or if you're racing in the United States, these are what you would have to adhere to. If you don't, Dubai would love to have you. I don't know. But that is the biggest thing. I think we need to get a uniform policy for all tracks in the United States. So hopefully, excuse me, hopefully that we won't have to touch on this subject again, but I have a feeling we will. But hopefully we can get through a podcast without leading off with it. That is my goal going forward. So, but with that being said, before we do dive into the big day at Belmont on Saturday, let's take a look back at the Preakness, obviously the second jewel of the Triple Crown. We are not going to see a Triple Crown Mage did not win the Preakness. It was a fantastic race. As I get my notes up, National Treasure and Blazing Sevens, maybe a stretch run, one of the more memorable stretch runs I've seen in a Preakness in quite some time, but it is National Treasure who does get the win. A very interesting race. We talked about it. Mage, the only horse from the Derby that ran in the Preakness. A good run from Mage, but I really didn't think that we were going to see Mage kind of flirt with the Triple Crown, and the fact that pretty much that horse was going up against essentially fresh horses didn't help its case. But Raider Jim, what were your thoughts on very, very exciting Preakness Stakes?
You hit the nail on the head. Mage went up against a bunch of fresh horses, if you will. And National Treasure, Baffert had that horse ready to go, Blazing Sevens too. I did not put any money on Mage at 7-5. You wonder if that gets to be the situation that you and I talk about at times, where the casual bettors load up on a horse because, hey, that's the horse that won the Derby and everybody says it's good. How much money was there on the betting line that day? I will tell you that I did get the exacta that day, and thanks to Mage, I did not get my trifecta because I had Red Route 1 as my third horse in that in my trifecta box. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. But a great run by National Treasure. Now, going into the Belmont, different story. National Treasure is not going to have the same type of field to run against, and I think is going to be challenged in this race. Does it have the capability of winning the race? Absolutely, not to be overlooked. But this is almost kind of a very well laid out field for National Treasure in the Preakness.
Yeah, 100%. I don't mean any disrespect to any of the horses.
To none of the horses, no.
But this was probably the weakest Preakness I've probably ever seen. If I really want to dive in and go, tit for tat. And a lot of that did come down to the fact that you only had Mage as the Derby, or the only Derby returning horse, if you will. And Mage didn't beat Forte, didn't beat the big horse. There was a lot of question marks. That was a weird Derby in general. Also eligibles were in, and we still could only get 18 horses in. Still a big field, but Derby's always 20. So that was interesting, but it felt just kind of anticlimactic. And
yes,
looking at this card that we're going to be talking about, and this race, the Belmont Stakes, I think this is the big one. This is kind of the one where we can kind of point and go, okay, excuse me. This is where we're going to figure out who's the best 3-year-old, at least early on, going forward. And, and Mage, I'm sure, might want to say something about that too, because Mage isn't running in the Belmont, and I do want to give Mage credit for a good Derby run. But I don't think if Mage was in this field, I don't think it changes anything, at least on my card. And I don't think it changes too many odds overall. But yeah, the Preakness, a fantastic race. It's kind of like when you see, the 2-12 Bills versus the, 1-13 Browns. And you go, oh, I got to watch that game. But it turns out to be 41-38. It was a great game. Was it, did it look on the outside as the sexiest matchup? No. But it might end up being the best Triple Crown. It might end up being one of the best big horse races of the year overall. It just unfortunately didn't have that star power, anything like that. But once again, no disrespect to any of the horses that ran in this race, especially not National Treasure, Blazing I always want to call it Blazing Saddles because I love that movie, but Blazing Sevens, and of course Mage and all those other horses. Good stuff. But yeah, I think all the big horses were looking ahead to the Belmont, which is, of course, where we are going next. But before we do dive into the Belmont Stakes, we do have a few races to talk about. We are going to first check in on the Ogden Phipps. That will be race 7. It is a grade 1, and this is a Breeders' Cup win and you're in race. This will get you into the Longines Distaff. So, of course, if you hear Distaff, you're going to be hearing about fillies and mares. Raider Jim, I'll give you the honors of getting us started on the Grade 1 Ogden Phipps.
Yeah, all the races we're going to talk about are Grade 1s. This race 7, the Ogden Phipps Stakes, Grade 1, $500,000, 1 1/16 mile. And as Brandon already said, Longines Distaff, you're in if you win. Ogden Phipps was a famous owner and breeder from the 30s until 2002 when he died. He got into the game because his mom and dad loved horses. He was actually a business guy, a finance guy, plus they were also collectors of art. And it just happened back in the 30s. He decided he was going to buy himself some horses, and it took off from there. And he has horses in the Horse Racing Hall of Fame, and he himself is also in the Horse Racing Hall of Fame. Now, small field, 6 horses in this one, which is good because one of the races we're talking about has an army of horses.
Yeah.
A lot of familiar names here. You can't look at this and say, I've never heard of these people. I've never heard of the horse on the outside, number 6, Clairiere. Steve Asmussen and Joel Rosario, one of my favorites. And I have to say, as much as I have appreciated and followed Clairiere, that Clairiere is the early morning 6-5 favorite right now. I'm not saying it. She hasn't had much success since last summer. Returned to form in April, won the Grade 1 Apple Blossom Handicap, ran down Secret Oath in the stretch, got the win by a neck. It was a fantastic stretch run. But prior to that, before that, you have to go back to June, July of last year, 2022, before you saw Clairiere do much of anything. So I think 6-5 is a little misleading on this one. Secret Oath as well at 2-1. That's D. Wayne Lucas and Tyler Gaffalone. Good horse. Always has the potential to win. Will definitely finish in the money, as will Search Results. I think Search Results, the number 2 horse, has a chance to win the race. Chad Brown, Flavian Pratt at 4-1, not a bad value right now. Has cooled a bit since last summer. Came in 6th in the 2022 Breeders' Cup Distaff, which was kind of disappointing for Search Results, but is back on track. Seems to be back training very, very well. The horse I like in this one, though, is probably going to be a surprise to you, Brandon, because I've never talked about this horse. Phil Bowers Played Hard, the 5 horse at 6-1, fantastic value. J.R. Velasquez is going to be riding. This horse is fast, and this horse is winning, and I don't know how this horse comes into this race. Such a small field. I understand it's a loaded field, good names, a lot of pedigree out there, but Play Hard is my favorite at 6-1. My ticket's going to have Play Hard, Search Results, and probably Secret Oath. Clairiere, maybe on the bottom I'll fill in, but it's only a 6-horse field, so you don't want to ruin too much value by loading too many horses on the ticket.
Yeah. That's great. It's funny. I had Played Hard essentially as my value pick as well, as 6-1. And this is a horse that last time out beat both Secret Oath and Search Results. It was a great race in the La Troyen, the Grade 1 at Churchill back early parts of May when kind of all this stuff was going down. But this is a horse that ran a career best, or at least close to a career best of a 98. I think that's good enough to at least get you in the money here. And it's 6-1. I'm willing to pay to see what happens with Play Hard. I was kind of like you. I wasn't maybe necessarily surprised that Clairiere was the favorite, but 6-5 in this field as a morning line. I mean, even take Play Hard out of it. Secret Oath and Search Results, those are 2 of possibly the 3 best fillies in the world. Obviously, Clairiere did have some, rough, a bit of a rough run of things, as you kind of alluded to. I will play a little devil's advocate. You look at Clairiere, the 3 races that the horse did not make it in the winner's circle. It did lose to Malathot and Secret Oath. So it wasn't, total tomato cans it was losing to, but at the same time, we're still talking about that same competition in this race, and it's 6-5, at least currently. I don't see the value there. Played hard. I'd love for this horse to go under the radar and maybe go off even closer, maybe to 8-1. That would be great. But yeah, Secret Oath as well was a horse that jumped out to me. I need to see more value here at 2-1 and probably going to even drop. I wouldn't be surprised to see Secret Oath go off as the favorite when that bell does kind of finally ring. So I'm not a huge amount of value in my book there for Secret Oath. Search results you talked about as well, of kind of the big three: Clairiere, Search Results, and Secret Oath. Search Results has the best value at 4-1. Will it when it goes down? Who knows? But right now, I really like Search Results. Excuse me, I'm getting over a cold, so I'm fighting through this. But Search Results and Played Hard are probably exacta picks for me. Another horse too to keep an eye on. It's going to need a lot to get into the money, but the value could possibly be there. Is the one horse Past the Champagne. It's a horse that's, last time out ran in 94. Will need to improve a lot to get higher, but at 8-1 and will probably be closer to 15-1 when this is all said and done. There is some value there as maybe a horse to sneak, to run someone down and finish in third and ruin a bunch of people's trifectas, but you maybe had it as a trifecta box that could really help some value of, if we get chalk at the top of this board. So it's going to be interesting to see how this goes, but obviously I do want to thank Raider Jim for the history lesson on the Ogden Phipps. I felt like looking it up, but I said, you know what, Raider Jim's got it. I want to stay in my lane, let Raider Jim do his thing. So I appreciate that. But this is going to be a really, really interesting race. Another thing about Belmont, and this is pretty much going to go for all the races that aren't the stakes. You don't see too often. This race is going 1 mile and 16. It's only one turn. And that just kind of speaks to the size of Belmont. So
Right.
Something to keep an eye on there. Something to think about. Now, these horses, for the most part, they know things like that. But for some of these mile horses, this is, unless they run at Belmont a lot, they're used to 2-turn miles. This is only a 1-turn mile. Once again, just something to think about for some of these until we get to the stakes. But that's all we have for the Grade 1 Ogden Phipps. Once again, that does get you into the Longines Breeders' Cup, the Breeders' Cup Longines Distaff that will be going down up at Santa Anita in November. Next up, we have the Hyper, which is going to be race 9. It is Grade 1 on the turf that will get you into the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint. Raider Jim, what are your thoughts on the Hyper?
On the Hyper, first of all, do you know why it's called the Hyper?
I don't, but I bet you do.
I kind of do. Yeah, it's actually named after a 1962 phenom, a 3-year-old phenom, Hyper, who ran the most well-known race in the Travers ever. That's where it came. Horse was so good, they named the race after it. Not a bad
I'm just
story.
glad I pronounced it right.
There you go.
Yeah.
There's 4 horses I like here out of a big field. This is 14 horses. These are the older horses, if you will, the seniors of the group. They are starting anywhere from 4 years old to 7 years old. Wow, the horse on the rail right now is Yes and Yes out of Kentucky, is a 17-year-old gelding, to give you an example, going to go off at 20-1. And as I go through this particular race, that's when I start looking and saying, really, do some of these horses, should they really be out there? After you read some of the stories that we shared about Churchill Downs, but I'm not going to get too much into that. I do like in this one, number 8, Arrest Me Red, I think is going to end up in the money. You've got a trainer Ward, ridden by Irad Ortiz Jr. He rides this horse well. At 6-1, you got a good value there. The one that I'm really going to watch, the one that I will probably end up definitely having on my ticket, is the 2 horse out of Ireland, Go Bears Go. That is W.A. Ward, and it's Irad's brother Jose riding that horse. This horse is fast at 12-1. You're not going to be surprised if it ends up in the money. I've seen this horse run before. It does run a good race. This could be a great field. This could be a good track for him. to really go out and do some damage and definitely put a little bit more spotlight on them. Then there's also my favorite in this is Caravel, the 12 horse. Just too fast, too much history at 3-1. Brad Cox and Tyler Gaff alone. This is going to be a challenger. It's going to be hard to beat this one unless you are Big Invasion, the 10 horse. Joel Rosario, 6-1, also a good horse. That's my 4 on this one. And again, there were so many, too hard to go through all of them.
Yeah, this is a massive field. We even, I think, we have 2 also eligibles as well. Neither of them really made my radar, so no point in looking at that. But just to give you an idea, a huge field here. Obviously, for me, the one that jumps out is Caravel. This is a horse. Look, this is an open gender, or anything you want to run. This is a mare, and it's running at this level, and it's winning at this level. This is your defending Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint. All these horses, they win, they're going to the Breeders' Cup, or whatever horse wins gets to go to that Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint. Caravel, the defending champ of that race, hasn't lost pretty much since last September. In those situations, since Tyler Gaffleone has pretty much gotten aboard, this horse has done nothing but win. 1.6 million in earnings. Be interesting to see if this mare can continue to beat the boys. The other horse that does jump out to me is Casa Creed. Casa Creed's a horse that I've had my eye on for quite some time. Ran at Del Mar in the Breeders' Cup Mile, back 2 years ago when the Breeders' Cup was here. Very interesting horse. At 9-2 has kind of turned into a sprint turf horse again. We'll see how that goes. The value here, I want to see it maybe closer to 6-1. Once again, this is a horse that was pretty much running at a mile for most of its career. Like to see a little bit more out of that. Once again, I apologize. Another horse that did jump out to me that will probably make my ticket for value purposes is the 9 horse. Nothing better. Ran well and has continued. It runs in the mid-90s, and I'm a big fan of consistency. You're looking at 92, 95, 98, 95, 95. Very consistent. Will need a bump, though. We need to get into the triple digits to win this race. I don't know if this horse has enough. I think this could be a great play show bet, or maybe, to fill out a trifecta. I do think Nothing Better could possibly get in the money here. And then I also did have Go Bears Go. This is a horse that's it only runs in grades 1 and grade 2s. So sometimes it's a little tough when you look at 16 starts, but only been in the money 9 times, only been in the winner's circle 4 times. But this horse is running up against the best, not only in North America, but in the world. This is an Irish horse that runs a lot in Great Britain. Obviously, will run at Churchill as well, and now is running at Belmont. So a very well-traveled horse. I just think the competition and the quality and quantity might work against this horse going forward, but I do think this is a horse under the ticket. A play show bet, plenty of value at 12-1. But this is a really big really big field for only a 6 furlong turf race. It's going to be a very interesting start. Keep an eye on Yes and Yes. That horse got to get out quick, or it's going to get pinched. I can guarantee you that. It's going to be interesting to see how the grade 1 hyper goes going forward, and who gets to punch their ticket to the turf sprint in November. But moving on to our second to last race we're going to be talking about. It is the Metropolitan Mile. The Metropolitan Handicap, I should say, going a mile on the dirt at Belmont. This is going to be race 10. We have $1 million purse here. And of course, before I pass it over to Raider Jim, I have to say, maybe my favorite horse, just because of the story, Cody's Wish. If you don't know the story of Cody's Wish, you don't know why this horse is named Cody's Wish, go look it up. I can't do it justice. And if you watch that entire video and you don't come out of it emotional, I'm going to need to try and find your heart because it is a tearjerker. But with that being said, Raider Jim, what are your thoughts on the Metropolitan Handicap?
Yeah, the Hillendale Metropolitan Handicap, also a grade one, $1 million purse. You go to the Big Ass Fans race at the Breeders' Cup if you win this one. This race has been run since 1904, is recognized as one of the most prestigious races outside of a Triple Crown race or a Breeders' Cup race, known as the Stallion Maker, which I think is a fascinating name. Anyway, there's only one favorite in this race. It's not a big field. I think the field is only, let me get the right number, 9 entries. The favorite, Cody's Wish. Let me tell you, Cody's Wish torched the straight at Churchill Downs in the Churchill Downs Stakes back on Derby Day, I believe it was.
Yep.
And then the other thing on the resume is Cody's Wish ran in the Big Ass Fans race back in November, and again, remarkably well, just took control of the field. Going to be hard to bet anybody but Cody's Wish to end up in the winner's circle. So what you're really looking at is, who do I want to box with Cody's Wish? Who else is going to be on my ticket? The horse I like, Repo Rocks. I think this horse is fantastic, nice and fast. It's going to be, this is Jamie Ness. It's Jamie Ness and Ruben Silvera are going to be taking care of this horse at 4-1. You got a good value. Then you also have an old favorite who I might put in as a spoiler underneath on the ticket. That's Dr. Scheibel. That's going to be Irad Ortiz riding Dr. Scheibel today. Scheibel's been around. Scheibel hasn't run up to, hasn't been killing it on the horse lately, but put together one good race, and I think this is the race they can do it in. And then also the 6 horse Zandon. That's going to be Chad Brown and Flavian Pratt. Always an opportunity to win money on that. To find any one of those 3 horses filling out your ticket second and third, definitely a chance, maybe a superfecta if that's what you're into. And that 5-1, you got good value with Zandon.
Yeah, for first and foremost, Cody's Wish, this is essentially this race for the horse to lose. It checks all the boxes here. Very impressive at Churchill, as you said, on Derby Day, winning that grade 1 pretty much by a mile. Jose Alvarado, I think, was essentially galloping towards the end. The only thing I will say, and something that might hold, or maybe some reason to maybe doubt Cody's Wish, there's a lot of early speed in this race. Like a heavy majority of these horses want to get onto the lead. And sometimes when that happens, inevitably someone turns it up to 11. And that means that another horse is up to 10, and it kind of works its way down. My only worry, I guess, for Cody's Wish is will that kind of pace horse make that pace too much for Cody to run down? I don't really think that's the case, but once again, there's not going to be a ton of value with Cody's Wish. So I'm just kind of trying to find, I guess, maybe chinks in the armor or something like that. A horse that really caught my eye breaking everything down is White Abarrio. And it's the 9 horse. It's 10-1, a lot of value. The numbers don't jump off the page at you. It's been a while since this horse has been in the winner's circle at this level. You got to go all the way back to the Florida Derby last year, pre-Derby of last year, to see this horse win at this level. However, last time out, ran in an optional claiming, obviously dropped down, ran a 103 buyer. So obviously not the level that we're looking at here, but I do like that number. This horse was actually slated to run in that run at Churchill on Derby Day. However, this horse was trained by Sappy Joseph. So that horse, of course, was ineligible to run in that race. And White Abarrio has since been given back apparently to Richard Dutrow. So just keep an eye there. So this horse was ready to kind of go up against Cody's Wish. Other things happened. We'll see there. I think 10-1, there's a lot of value there. I apologize. You brought up Repo Rocks at 4-1. Obviously, I really do like the fact that this horse beat Zandon last time out in the Winchester, so that kind of gives you a little bit of a notch up there. 4-1. I want to see that number get a little higher before I do anything. And going back to Dr. Scheibel, you know, it's interesting because I remember seeing this and seeing Dr. Scheibel and told myself, oh, I'm on the wrong race because I'm talking about a mile race here.
Right.
Why is Dr. Scheibel here? Dr. Scheibel's a sprint race. And looking at it, I mean, this horse is, at least according to DRF, I don't know if the PPs go even further back, but I mean, 7 furlongs is the furthest this horse has ran. So that's going to be interesting. Now, devil's advocate, kind of going back to the track layout at Belmont, technically, this is still a one-turn race. So maybe not that much. We're only talking about, what, an extra furlong stretching out. Might be making a bigger deal of it more so than needed to, but that was kind of something that did turn me off from Dr. Scheibel, because this is a horse that's a really good sprint horse. What are we doing in a mile race? But it is one turn, so that could possibly be it. But not a lot of value outside of, Cody's Wish, the favorite, probably not going to have a whole lot of value. You're going to have to go find it. A lot of opportunities. This is definitely a race you're going to kind of want to see where the tote board lands with about 5 minutes to go, and that might determine where you go with it. So with that being said, it is time, of course, to talk about the big one on Belmont Saturday. It's going to be the Grade 1 Belmont Stakes. It is the third and final jewel in the Triple Crown. Obviously, these are for 3-year-olds going 1.5 miles on the dirt at Belmont. Raider Jim, what are your thoughts?
Another small field. You look at the field for the Kentucky Derby, which we talk about as always, 20 horses, provided they can find 20 horses to put in the gates. But 20 horses, and then we had the field reduced down to, I think it was 7 for the Preakness. Now we're at the Belmont. The Belmont's only fielding 9 horses. 6 of these 9 horses have all were in G1s, their last races. And none of the entries this is going to be the farthest distance for any of them that are in this race. The pace is going to be a little bit different. The pace is not going to work well for National Treasure. I don't believe. You usually don't go too much against Bob Baffert, but in this one, I think the Preakness was set up in favor of National Treasure. What I mean by that is the caliber of the horses, the pace of the race, but had to really push to get that win at the end of the race, and now going to come back after just a couple weeks off. These other horses are going to be a little more fresh. My favorite, and the horse I think is going to win, is Angel of Empire. Also ran in the Derby. This is the 8 horse, Brad Cox, Flavian Pratt. The important thing here is he's going to be putting blinkers on Angel of Empire. And the reason he's doing that is he would train Angel of Empire with blinkers because he felt like he just didn't want to get him too freaked out when getting used to doing the race situations, etc. They ran him without blinkers in one of the races, and it was Flavian who came back to Brad Cox and said, put blinkers on this horse and it's going to go crazy, and it's going to be night and day. And so he has made the decision to go ahead and put blinkers on Angel of Empire for this race. Where that's probably going to be most beneficial is instead of hanging in the back and having to fight his way through the pack, now with blinkers, he's probably going to be able to keep this horse in the middle of the pack, which is going to make it much better for him when they come around that far stretch, and he'll be able to use the gas that he has, but not from such a distance back. It's going to be easier for him to get into the front and stay in the front. Tappet Trice, I think that's Todd Fletcher's other horse that's going to be in this. He's got another one in here. At 3-1, I think Tappet Trice is probably made for this race, but I think it's going to be those two, Angel of Empire, Tappet Trice. Forte at 5-2 was the big favorite going into the Kentucky Derby, and everybody knows by now Forte got pulled the morning of the Derby. They said it was an injury. It was days later that they found out that was when the ruling came down that Fletcher got penalized for some things that went on. I don't know. There was a lot of irony there. Has one is a heavy favorite in the Florida Derby back on April 1st at Gulfstream. September 2022 through April, won 5 straight, and that included 4 G1 races and 1 G2. You can't say enough about it. Reason not the top favorite for me is because is he really 100% healed? That's one. Two, how's he going to hold at the distance? And that's just one too many questions for me. Two too many questions for me. There's nothing not concrete there. And then the one that I like underneath as a good value, put them on your ticket. Going to be on mine. Arcangelo, Jenna Antonucci, and Javier Castellano. 8-1. You can't go wrong. This horse keeps improving and improving and improving. The buyer rate goes up by 13 points every time he goes out. So this horse has a lot of potential. And don't be surprised when it ends up in the money.
Yeah, wow. I did not expect that because I have the same thing for the 3-horse Arcangelo. And that's the big thing that jumped out to me. Big spikes in the buyer, 53 to 70 to 84 to 97.
That's just nuts.
Yeah. And guess what? 110 will win here. I guarantee it. I'm not great at math, but 97 plus 13, 110 gets us there. The thing that really jumps out to me in this race, and you somewhat alluded to it earlier, is really the lack of early speed. The last race we talked about, I thought maybe there's too much early speed. This one, I don't know where the early speed's coming from. Obviously, National Treasure is probably going to be that horse up there, but I don't think, Velasquez wants National Treasure on the lead. But I think just the fact of the matter, this is the fastest early horse, or at least by the numbers there. It'll be interesting to see how National Treasure does. I'm not fully writing them off there. It's hard for me to get away from Forte. I know, obviously, didn't run in the Derby. There were some other things going on. But this is a horse that essentially at this level hasn't been beaten. This is the 2-year-old champ, won the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, and can pick right back up. Fountain of Youth, dominant. Florida Derby, got the job done, beat Mage. So I think for Forte, 5-2 is probably right where the lowest I'll go, if you will, in terms of value. I think that has some pretty good value. Another horse besides that Arcangelo that I talked about for me was Tapit Trice. I do have a little bit of a bad taste in my mouth from the Derby. Did not run well in the Derby. Finished 7th, but was almost 10 lengths off the lead. And I thought everything kind of fell into Tapit Trice's lap with Forte scratching and the field kind of shrinking relatively. Didn't really get the job done.
Did get bumped somewhere along the way.
Yeah. And I feel like in the Derby though, like that's like going to your dentist office and him going, well, what happened to your tooth? And you go, I went to a hockey game. It's like, oh, okay, I know what happened there. It's like, I was in the Derby. Oh, you probably got bumped, right? Yeah, everyone gets bumped. I don't know. It's hard. And it happens. Obviously, these are 3-year-old horses, and it doesn't take a lot for them to get off. I want to see more at 3-1 from them. Angel of Empire, as you brought up, I think has the best value. Is it the best horse? I don't know. But I think it's 7-2 out of all of these, by far the best value. It's hard for me to get away from Forte right now.
Definitely going to be a competitive race. It's going to be a fun one to watch.
I think so. I mean, as good as the Preakness was, once again, maybe in terms of who was running, not the sexiest field ever, but that race was fantastic. I think if we get half of the race in this one with the field, it's going to be one to remember. But that's all we have for you. Hopefully, as I knock on wood, we will see those races ran safely on Saturday in some cleaner air. I don't think we can ask for clean air at this moment, but we can ask for cleaner air. But Raider Jim, what do you got for our final thoughts for this Belmont Stakes preview episode?
Yeah, looking forward to Del Mar starting up in a few weeks. Like you said, I can't wait. I love when the fair starts, but because I know then it's going to end pretty soon, and we'll be sitting on the apron of the Del Mar racing season. Good luck to all the riders this weekend, the owners, the trainers, and let's everybody work together to keep those horses safe.
Amen. Amen. I'm kind of echoing what Raider Jim said, obviously on the Del Mar side of things. Every day that we kind of, cross off, not only are we getting one day closer to Del Mar summer meet, but we are getting closer to Breeders' Cup 2024 at Del Mar. And yeah, just like 2021? 2021, myself and Raider Jim will be there to break it all down, maybe give ourselves 18 months to figure out some of the technical stuff and maybe do a little live stream for you. But
there you go.
We shall see. But every day we're getting closer and closer to that day. But ideally, as Raider Jim said, I don't want us to get blinded. Sometimes what do they say? You can't see the trees through the forest or whatever that is. I don't want us to get blinded. Great racing and all this stuff. The biggest thing that we have to do is, horse racing enthusiast is to not only make sure that these horses are being safe, but we need to hold those people accountable that are in positions of power to do that. And ideally, the Horse Racing and Integrity Act, Safety and Integrity Act, and enforcement, however that's worded, is going to kind of start to put their nose to the grindstone, get some of these things figured out, and hopefully this time next year we can look back and go, wow, I'm glad we got through that. So, but with that, thank you all so much for listening to this episode of the original Call to Post presented by the First Off the Bench Podcast Network. Everyone comes off the bench. We are first. It's time for y'all to go wash your hands and stop hating, everybody. We'll talk to y'all very soon. Take care.
Have a good night.